You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the Sports Map Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Making his triumphant return to the Jake Asman Show right here on Sports Map Radio is Outkick.com's finest. He's also a Heisman Trophy voter, but more importantly, a former co-host on radio. He is Cody Stoots, and he joins us right now on our progressive guest line. Cody, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
I'm happy to be here, and I hope Kyle Shanahan doesn't know something that I don't know about who's making it to the weekend and whatnot. I mean, what a weird deal he's got going on in San Francisco trying to defend his actions before he takes any action.
I thought my buddy Alex Barth, who I know you know well, had a great tweet yesterday about that. He said, I'm not sure what Jimmy Garoppolo should do first, request a trade or enter witness protection. It was bizarre, to say the least. So I wanted to get you on. You, of course, do have a Heisman Trophy vote. You are as knowledgeable on the NFL draft and just college football in general, you know, as far as just people I know in my life that I talk to every day. So I thought it'd be fun to get your thoughts on all the top storylines here. Let's start with the Niners, since you brought it up. What do you think they should do with the third pick? And ultimately, what do you think they end up doing with the third pick?
Well, they're obviously going to draft a quarterback, so I can't be a smart aleck and say they should draft a quarterback. But what they've had to do over the past few weeks is figure out if there's any minutia of a chance Jets do something to totally surprise somebody. You and I both believe that's not going to be the case. Zach Wilson's going to. And then it's trying to pick between three guys or two guys, if you listen to some people's reports. It's Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and then Michael McCorkle, Mac Jones. What a middle name he's got going on. And really, this is the defining moment of Kyle Shanahan's career. I understand that he's been to a Super Bowl and he got really close to beating Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. His quarterback didn't make the throw and they lost that game. But they have had more failure in San Francisco than massive success. So this is a defining moment for what a lot of people believe is one of the best young head coaches in the National Football League. And with that, you have to nail this if you're Kyle Shanahan, or a lot of people in your organization, maybe not you, but a lot of people in your organization will be looking for a new job. Ultimately, I believe they're going to go with someone who they believe can help them win long-term. As much as I want to focus on 2021, and I believe they should pick the guy that can play the best in 2021, I believe they're setting themselves up. And I really think San Francisco is hoping for a long-term answer so that the window stays open for a very long time. And when I look at Fields, when I look at Jones, I look at Lance, I feel like Lance is probably that guy for that long-term, but it's trying to weigh it between how successful can we be in 2021 and how successful could we be long-term. Ultimately, there's too much smoke. There's fire. I believe they're going to go Mac Jones.
Give me your quarterback rankings for the top five guys.
This one to me is pretty darn easy. It's Lawrence, it's Wilson, it's Justin Fields, it's Trey Lance, and it's Mac Jones. And I say that because I believe when we're talking about quarterback rankings, you don't really say, oh, well, who's going to be the best in 2021? Who's going to be the best over 5 years? Tell me how often, if we did this 100 times, that ends up being the order. And I think that's going to end up being the order in most scenarios. So most often, if we went through this scenario, that's going to be the five-man order. Could I see a scenario where it ends up being Mac Jones as the third best quarterback in those top five guys? Yeah, absolutely. It's not out of the question, but the most likely outcome to me is that five-guy order, which is obviously Lawrence and Wilson at the top, Gap, and then those three guys are really closely bunched. I would say that when this whole draft process started, I don't know if they were as closely bunched as they are now, but I think closely bunched. So for me, it's Fields, Lance, and then Mac Jones.
Why do you have, as we're talking with Cody Stoots from Outkick.com, also a Heisman Trophy voter, great college football guy. We're honored to have him right here on the show. Why do you have Wilson as your number two guy? It seems like there's a lot of debate after Trevor Lawrence. I think the consensus is starting to be, Cody, Wilson's the second guy, but why do you personally have Zach Wilson as your number two quarterback?
Arm talent is big. The ability to play off schedule, the ability to play within something that is not super quarterback friendly. I mean, look at what BYU possesses. Sure, they had a bunch of big uglies on the offensive line, a few guys that you'll see get their name called in the NFL draft over the next couple of years. But they're not facing great competition. So playing within himself, not trying to do too much, not trying to play hero ball. I really like just the ability to make all the throws on the field. I don't know that you can say that exactly about Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. And even if they can make all the throws similar to the way Wilson can, Wilson makes those throws just a little bit better. And I do like the quantity sort of the unknown, where Zach Wilson, if we had this discussion a year ago about the 2021 quarterback draft class, he's probably not on the radar for a lot of people. And we've seen that over the past few seasons pop up as a huge positive for teams. Obviously, Baker Mayfield came out of nowhere to end up as number one. Joe Burrow came out of nowhere to end up as number one. Same with Kyler Murray. And when I say came out of nowhere to end up as number one, we didn't expect them a year prior to them going number one to be there. Well, a year ago, we didn't expect Zach Wilson to be number two. So I do believe that staying in that same vein, there's a lot of positive movement, a lot of things you can work with. I think there's going to be some really ugly moments for Zach Wilson in 2021, but that's fine. A lot of guys have ugly moments early on, and you get a lot of that junk out of their system early on so that you're in year 2, year 3, you start seeing the upward potential of this guy. Ultimately, to me, Wilson looks like the type of guy that in a best-case scenario, you're looking at easily a top 10 guy in the NFL here in a few years. And then in a worst-case scenario, yeah, the Jets are here in the next few years drafting another guy, but it's a it's a no-brainer to take this swing. It's not like there's a lot of debate about what should be happening at number 2.
Cody, as far as the wide receivers in this class, I know you feel very strongly about how this could play out. Give us your rankings. Give us your breakdown of the top guys at the receiver spot.
Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle are the same in the rankings for me. I know that's sort of a cop-out to put two guys at one, but it sort of depends on what you want. Do you want the guy that is sort of Michael Thomas in the way Jamar Chase can just take one step, beat a DB, cut over the middle, and take it to the house? Or do you want a guy like Jalen Waddle who's a little bit taller, Tyreek Hill type player where he can just be so fast and so athletic and change directions however he wants, whenever he wants? Which kind of wide receiver do you want? Teams are going to have to make a decision if they have the opportunity. The first team that's going to have that opportunity to make that decision is obviously Cincinnati, and then the teams right after them in the draft. And then right after that, Devontae Smith, certainly the weight is an issue, but you don't have that level of success in the SEC without being some type of big-time player. The tough part for Smith is, I think when you draft him, if you draft Devontae Smith, you're getting a player that's going to be a really good player. The problem is a lot of people are going to look around and see other wide receivers go in this draft that are going to be potentially great players, whereas Smith, his ceiling to me is that of a regularly good player. But at the same time, if you get a regularly good wide receiver that is constantly pushing for 1,000 yards, constantly getting close to 8, 9, 10 touchdowns, you can live with selecting him unless you're picking him 10th or 11th. If Smith goes 14th, 15th, that's a nice solid pick. And I like Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. It's a guy that's really physically skilled, runs routes really well, didn't have a ton of success in college compared to these other guys because he played at Minnesota and played in the Big Ten. But Rashad Bateman's a really nice player. Bateman, to me, screams Baltimore Ravens with one of their 2 first-round picks.
Talking all things NFL draft with Cody Stoots from Outkick, also, of course, a Heisman Trophy voter here on the show. You can find him on Twitter at Cody_Stoots. As far as defensive players go, Cody, I mean, when do we even see the first defensive prospect taken in this class? And give me your thoughts on some of the top guys you think are going to be great players at the next level.
I don't like Micah Parsons, just for the record. I don't really like him. I just don't see I was watching a draft special the other day, and Micah Parsons said, oh, well, whatever team lines me up at linebacker or defensive end is going to be super happy. And I kind of looked at myself. I was like, defensive end? This guy's tiny to be thinking about a defensive end. I don't like Micah Parsons. He might be the first defensive player taken. That team's going to be extremely disappointed. I just can't rock with a guy that's supposed to be that good that plays sort of that inside linebacker position. And in addition to that, opted out of a season. I know it's hard to criticize guys for opting out because when guys did opt out, we didn't know a ton about coronavirus, and I understand that. But he hadn't played football for a year, and I don't know that it's always a positive when you want to draft a defensive player that's an impact player. I like pretty much all these cornerbacks. I know there's going to be some guys that have some injury concerns at that spot. J.C. Horn's had some back stuff. I think there's another corner, Starley from Virginia Tech. He's had some issues with his back. Surtain obviously has the bloodline and played at Alabama. He's really nice. So I like the cornerbacks in the first round. Here's what I'll say about the defensive linemen, because when was the last time we talked about a draft and there wasn't a huge defensive line prospect? One of these defensive linemen is going to just slip down this first round, and they're going to end up on a team that was in the playoffs or near the playoffs last year, and that's going to be a big, big deal for a team that was already successful last year to add a defensive player that can work in and doesn't have to be just a terror from day one. Kwity Paye from Michigan, I know he could go as high as the early teens, but if he slips into the 20s, you could see a lot of teams battling it out to end up with him. I like him as a prospect. And then Jalen Phillips is a nice little boom or bust prospect out of Miami. Another Miami defensive lineman, Rousseau, he's a nice player, sort of a boom or bust selection there in the first round of defensive line. So some of these good teams in the NFL that are picking late in the first round are going to end up with some nice defenders because this is such an offensive, top-heavy draft in the first round.
I mean, Cody, is it possible that the first defensive player doesn't get picked, let's say, till number 10 with Dallas? They maybe take Surtain, take the first corner there. I mean, we could have 5 quarterbacks go in the top 9, a bunch of receivers, and Kyle Pitts come off the board. There's a real chance we might not see a defensive prospect taken till the 10th pick.
Well, I mean, and here's a thought with Dallas. If they took an offensive lineman slid to them, perhaps you could see a defensive player not come off the board until Philadelphia at 12 with maybe a corner. And if Philadelphia doesn't take a corner, then you're looking at Arizona at 16 as the first spot. Imagine if we had half the first round and we didn't have a defender go. Well, that would feel a little bit like the modern NFL, wouldn't it? The way offense is the focus, the way the rules are tailored towards making offenses better. I do ultimately believe Dallas is going to end up with a defensive player at 10. But if it gets past Dallas, we could see 16 in Arizona as the first time a defensive player comes off the board. And if the Cardinals are picking with their, choice of the defenders, that's a really nice situation that Arizona could find themselves in.
So Cody, you covered the Texans on a day in, day out basis. You still do a podcast with 2 radio guys, Mike Meltzer and Landry Locker, called In the Group Chat, where you guys talk a ton of Texans. Well, my question to you about the Texans is this. They don't have a first. They don't have a second round pick. What do you think Bill O'Brien will be doing the first night of the draft? Do you think he even tunes in? Does he laugh knowing that he wrecked the franchise? What do you think BOB's doing down in Alabama in regards to the NFL draft?
If Bill O'Brien's smart, he's keeping his head down. He's going to hope that Nick Saban's not watching the draft, seeing all the dumb decisions that he had play out as a positive for other teams and a massive negative for his former team. And if I was Bill O'Brien, I'd be making sure that the greatest college football coach of all time has less reasons to yell at me than he's yelled at previous offensive assistants that may or may not take it. Bill O'Brien's going to think he can take it, but Nick Saban is a whole new level. It's a lot different when you're a coach and Tom Brady's yelling at you. When Nick Saban's yelling at you, you better just shut up, Teapot, and you better not boil over on Nick Saban, or there can be a little fracas on the sideline.
Yes. Well said. He's Cody Stoots. He is over now at Outkick. You can check him out on Twitter at Cody_Stoots. Check out the podcast if you're based in Houston, in the group chat if you need some Texans talk. They also do Astros and maybe some Rockets. I don't know. The Rockets are awful, so probably not a lot of Rockets, Cody, but you get the point. Appreciate you hopping on. Love getting your perspective on everything going on with the draft. We'll do it again soon.
No problem, man. Anytime.
Cody Stoots with us there on our Progressive guest line. Drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. Quick break, and we're back to wrap up our show here on a Tuesday. Jake Asman with you. You're listening on Sports Map Radio.